This is the MPC Live 2, one of the most exciting and best MPCs yet. And in this video, we'll discuss what makes it so special and if it's right for you. The MPC Live 2 is a true standalone music production centerpiece. You can record, sequence, and arrange songs all within this unit, giving you the power of a DAW but without the need for a computer or even headphones. What makes the MPC Live 2 so special is a combination of its features in addition to its pedigree as a sampling drum machine. MPCs have been a staple in hip-hop and dance music production since they were first released in the 1980s. With an established workflow and proven architecture, the MPC Live 2 is built upon a solid foundation. With the success of the original MPC Live, the new model brings further innovations to make it stand out. Similar to the first MPC Live, we get the same rectangular form factor, touchscreen display, full-size pads, and multiple encoders. And there's still an internal rechargeable lithium-ion battery for hours of use by candlelight. We also get Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and a SATA connection. Both units share the same RAM and storage. So far, not much has changed. But the most notable update in the Live 2 is the built-in stereo monitor. Underneath the metal mesh at the bottom of the unit are a series of small speakers that work together to develop a surprisingly large and clear sound. We'll talk more about the speakers later on. The Live 2 also receives CV gate connections, similar to the MPC 1 and flagship MPC X. Now you can control outboard gear via CV and gate directly from the Live 2. We'll look more closely at all the connections in a bit. Also, they added 5 more dedicated function buttons, bringing the total to 27. They also added a master volume knob conveniently on the top of the unit. These additions make the workflow of the Live 2 much faster than the Live 1. Now let's take a step back and talk about the MPC as a musical instrument. Like all MPCs before it, at the heart of the MPC Live 2 is a powerful sequencer. It is based on the original MPC 60 that Roger Linn designed in the late 1980s and has seen many improvements since. In short, you can have 128 sequences, each of which can have 128 MIDI tracks, 8 audio tracks in standalone mode, and 128 audio tracks when used with the MPC software. You can have the power of a DAW in this small, portable, and standalone device. For more information about the sequencer, check out the MPC Key Concepts video. There's a link in the description. The Live 2 also has a robust and flexible sampler. You can connect a source, record, and create samples quickly and easily. You can record full audio tracks, say a guitar or a vocal. Or you can record vinyl directly in via the built-in phono input. Now you can chop the sample, assign it to the pads, and sequence the chops with precision and ease. The sampler workflow is one of the best on the market, and it even gives most DAWs a run for their money. With a powerful sequencer and a robust sampler, making music can be quick, fun, and enjoyable on the Live 2. But there's even more depth and features to engage users. There's also built-in synthesizers, effects, and many advanced features you would commonly find within a DAW. The Live 2 can be used to create highly polished songs, beats, or even sound design. Some use their MPC as a sequencer to control outboard gear. Some use it for finger drumming practice, while many others use it as an all-inclusive workhorse for creating music in a spectrum of genres. Countless hit songs have been made on MPCs, and that's pretty inspirational. Let's take a closer look at the MPC Live 2. Physically, the device is 16.2 inches wide, 9.6 inches deep, and 1.8 inches high. It weighs 7.45 pounds, and it has a plastic body and a metal chassis. The body has a thin coating on it, presumably to help with Cheeto fingers. The buttons are backlit and made of a medium soft rubber compound. And there are 16 performance pads, which some say are the best in the industry. There's also an LED ring around each pad to help with organization and navigation. There's also 4 touch-sensitive endless encoders called Q-links for quick access to a variety of menu items and settings. And there's a large encoder for general navigation. Of course, you have this beautiful 7-inch touchscreen display. This is the centerpiece of the device. Use it to navigate the interface, see and edit sequences, and get visual feedback. This backlit LED display is bright and responsive. On the back panel, we have a variety of connections, so let's walk through those. From left to right, first we have a 1/4 inch stereo headphone output, of which the volume is controlled by the master volume knob on top. Next we have an on-off switch for the speaker. When engaged, the same volume knob adjusts speaker level output. Then we have a pair of 1/4-inch balanced TRS output jacks for the main monitors, also controlled by the volume knob. We also have 2 more pairs of TRS outputs which are helpful for multi-tracking. There's a Kensington lock slot to secure your MPC so your little brother can't take it. Now we need to take a moment to explain the input section. We see 2 sets of stereo inputs in the form of unbalanced RCAs and 1/4-inch balanced TRS jacks. Unlike the output section, where you can route tracks to different output jacks and use them simultaneously, the input section performs differently in that only one set of inputs can be used at a time. To select an input, you have a switch between phono and line. Phono means RCA and line is for the 1/4-inch jacks. The Live 2 has a built-in phono preamp which is intended to help you sample vinyl directly from a turntable. Since many turntables don't have an internal preamp, this is a bonus to have one within the MPC. But what if your turntable does have a preamp? Then you would want to use the line level input and you would likely need some simple cable adapters to do so. Lastly, if you are using Live 2's built-in phono preamp, make sure you connect the ground wire from the turntable to the supplied grounding terminal. Alright, moving on. We have an SD card slot for loading and saving files. Next to that, we have 2 5-pin DIN MIDI inputs as well as 2 outputs. We then have the CV gate connections we mentioned earlier. It's worth noting that each of these 1/8-inch jacks is actually 2 outputs in each port. So you'll want to get a set of 1/8-inch TRS to 1/8-inch TS breakout cables to make use of all 8 outputs. We have 2 USB-A ports for connecting USB flash drives and USB MIDI-enabled devices. We can also expand these by using a USB hub. And there's a USB-B port which is used for connecting to a computer. This is a good opportunity to explain another feature of the Live 2. Up until now, we have discussed the MPC as a standalone device, but it's worth noting that the Live 2 can be used as a controller when connected to a computer via the MPC software. And you can transfer your projects from standalone mode to the MPC software for additional features and flexibility. The software can be used standalone or with your favorite DAW. You can even access the drives of the MPC from your computer to transfer files. And with the integrated Ableton Link functionality, Live 2 works well with Ableton Live and Link-enabled apps. Let's return to the back panel. Next to the USB ports, we see a restraint to secure the power adapter so it doesn't accidentally get pulled out. We also have an Ethernet connection for using Ableton Link. A quick side note, we can also use Live 2's Wi-Fi to utilize the Ableton Link feature. The last connection on the back panel is the DC power input, and we have the main power switch. It's also worth showing the bottom of the device. Here we can see a plate in the middle that can be removed for the purpose of installing an additional hard drive. Between this, the SD card slot, and the USB-A ports, you have plenty of options for additional storage. Lastly, in terms of internal specs, we get a quad-core ARM processor, 2 GB of RAM, and 16 GB of internal storage, most of which is loaded with content and the OS. The unit operates internally in 32-bit floating point, and its A to Ds and D to As are 24-bit up to 96 kHz. Now let's look at the speaker. We can turn it on via the switch on the back, and we're ready to rock. First impressions are that it sounds pretty good, and it's definitely usable. It sounds much fuller and cleaner than you think it would given its size. Since there are no published specifications for the speaker, let's do some tests to understand how it performs. The setup is this. We have a phone running an audio analysis app to generate sound and analyze what's being heard via the built-in microphone. We are connected directly to the MPC from the phone via an adapter and a cable into Live 2's line level input. We have the input switch set to line and the record volume knob is set high. Output level on the phone is set to about 75%. Lastly, you'll hear these tests via an external microphone. On the MPC, we have a blank project open and we select an audio track and engage the input. Now we'll generate pink noise to test the spectrum of sound coming through the speaker. We can turn up the volume on the MPC to see the maximum SPL, which is about 90 decibels. We can also see the frequency response of the speakers. Ideally, we should see a flat line across the frequency spectrum. However, we see a drop-off at 80 Hz and above 14 kHz. Let's perform another test. This time we'll generate a sine wave so we can isolate the frequency and see what the speaker does. We know the speakers drop off below 80 Hz, so let's look closely at how the lower spectrum performs. After all, bass is an important component in most music. If we generate a sine wave at 100 Hz, we see a clear spike on our spectrum analyzer at the same frequency, as expected. If we max the volume on the MPC, we see a max SPL around 90 decibels, which is in line with our last test. If we lower it to 80 Hz, we see a similar spike. And as we drop it to 50 Hz and below, we can see that it drops off almost completely around 50 Hz. Let's quickly test the high frequencies. Starting at 12 kHz, we see a corresponding spike at the same frequency. And as we move up to 16 kHz, we see a similar spike. Now above 16K, we see a drop-off. So, we can conclude a few things from these tests. First, the speaker has a maximum SPL of 90 dB, which is about as loud as a lawnmower, a diesel truck, or my neighbor shouting for her missing cat. We also see that it has a relatively flat speaker response, which is great for making music. However, always check your mix on multiple listening systems. Also, we see that generally speaking, it has a frequency range between 60 Hz and 16 kHz. And just for reference, human hearing ranges between 20 Hz and 20 kHz. But very few speakers can reproduce the full spectrum. Alright, putting the technical notes aside, we ultimately want to know if this is a good investment. The MPC Live 2 retails for $1,200 US. For comparison, an MPC 1 retails for $700 and an MPC X is $2,200, which is a big spread in terms of pricing. So how do these compare in terms of features and what do you get for your money? Although the Live 2 is closer in price to the MPC 1, it's closer in features to the MPC X. But the Live 2 is unique because the other MPCs don't have batteries nor speakers. For many users, that increases its value well beyond the baseline features shared by the other MPCs. It's priced very aggressively considering how much more you get than the MPC 1. And it also makes it a bargain in comparison to the MPC X because it has most of the same features. That makes the Live 2 a great buy, not just in terms of the current MPCs, but arguably most devices on the market. A special note about the comparison with the Native Instruments Machine Plus, which was also released this year. The two devices are very compelling, and it's a topic for another video. If you want to see that comparison, comment below. Now, no device is perfect, and that includes the MPC Live 2. Although it's hard to find faults with the device, we'll do our best. With a design that started with the now discontinued MPC Touch, we saw the introduction of rubberized buttons. But it's odd that they don't match any other MPCs. To those whose first MPC is alive, there's not much experience to compare it to. But to those who are coming from any other MPC, the feel may be something to get used to. And to a degree, that also includes the coated texture of the body. Personally, I like the clicky buttons of other MPCs like the MPC 1 and the durability of metal bodies found in older MPCs. But that isn't to say that the Live 2's buttons are bad. Overall, I think this is a minor point. After a few days of use, you'll get used to it. So what's the bottom line? Should you buy the MPC Live 2? First, you can't go wrong with any of the current MPCs. But if you can't afford to pay the difference from a Live 1, then you get more bang for your buck. And you get more features and more portability and more flexibility overall. If you have a large sound library and adding an additional hard drive is a must, then the Live 2 is an obvious choice. If you have an older MPC, all of the new MPCs are drastically improved and you'll appreciate the innovations and technology. Ultimately, the MPC Live 2 is one of the best and most feature-rich MPCs to date. It all starts with a proven workflow, but it will continue to grow with you for a long time, especially as Akai continues to add more updates to the OS. If you're considering an MPC, check out the links below. Our friends at Sweetwater add a free 2-year warranty to the device, and they have excellent customer service should you ever need it. Lastly, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Sharing the video with a friend also helps a lot. Your support counts. Thanks for watching.